everything seems to be green. Your teams are hitting their targets, they're crushing their numbers. But then you look at the big picture, and the company as a whole is actually falling short. It's this super frustrating paradox, and it almost always points to a deep structural problem. And this right here, this is what we call the pain of misalignment. To really see how destructive it can be, let's just walk through a classic real-world example of what happens when well-intentioned team goals end up sabotaging a company's core strategy. Okay, so picture a software company. The board, the investors, everyone is on the same page. The number one strategic priority is to reduce customer churn. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Just keep the customers you already have. Now, let's zoom in on the support team. Their main key performance indicator, their KPI, is average handle time. So their entire incentive is to resolve customer calls as fast as humanly possible. On the surface, you might think, hey, that sounds efficient. But what kind of behavior does that actually drive? It encourages getting people off the phone, even if their issue isn't, truly solved. Meanwhile, over in the development team, they're being measured on something totally different. New features shipped. So the more new, shiny things they build, the better they look. And this means that fixing all those annoying underlying bugs that are driving existing customers crazy, that gets pushed way down the priority list. And here's the punchline. And it's a disaster. Both the support team and the development team totally hit their targets. They probably got their bonuses too. But because customer problems weren't being fully resolved and the product was actually getting buggier, customer churn went up. Individual success led directly to corporate failure. This is the classic symptom of a deeply broken system. So the whole point here is making this transition. We have to move from this state of chaos, where you have disconnected KPIs and everyone's pulling in different directions, to a state of pure clarity and unity. That's a world where you have this seamless hierarchy of metrics, and every single employee can see a clear line of sight from what they do every day all the way up to the company's biggest goals. So how do we actually fix this mess? Well, that brings us to the framework designed for this exact problem, a disciplined process that we call the KPI Cascade. At its heart, the KPI Cascade is simply a process. It's a way to translate those huge, high-level strategic objectives into a coherent, totally aligned set of measurable KPIs for every single level of the organization. Think of it as the bridge that connects the boardroom strategy to the daily work of your teams on the ground. And what I love about this is how it lays out a really clear 5-step process. You start at the very top, you break it down into functional and then team KPIs, and, this is key, you assign a single owner to every metric. But here's the secret sauce, the most critical step: you have to validate upwards. You have to actually check that if all the lower-level goals are met, it will logically and mathematically lead to hitting that top-level goal. This quote just perfectly captures the ultimate goal. When your cascade is working properly, anyone in the company, I mean anyone from an intern to a senior VP, should be able to clearly explain how their specific tasks for that day are helping the company win. It creates so much purpose and focus. It's a game changer. Okay, so the theory is great, but let's get down to it. How can you make this framework real for your organization? This is where the rubber really meets the road. Here's your playbook. First, run a KPI Cascade workshop, and you have to start with your executive team to lock in those top-level KPIs. And make sure you're defining both lead indicators, that's the activities you do, and lag indicators, the results you get. Then, you've got to make it all visible to everyone with dashboards so the score is clear. And here's a pro tip. Track something called the cross-functional KPI conflict rate to actively hunt down and destroy misalignment. But hang on, before you run off and do this, I have to give you a quick but really important word of warning. You have to beware of a super common and dangerous pitfall known as the watermelon effect. So the watermelon effect, it's such a great name for it, right? It's when your KPI dashboards are all green on the outside, but the business is bleeding red on the inside. This happens when your cascade is logically flawed. A couple other things to watch out for. Avoid KPI overload. Seriously, 3 to 5 key metrics per team is plenty. And finally, you have to remember that KPIs define the what, not the how. You must give your teams the autonomy to figure out the best way to hit their numbers. So, to wrap all this up, let's get incredibly practical. I want to leave you with one simple, super powerful action you can take this week to get a quick diagnosis of your own organization's alignment. This Monday morning, I want you to walk up to any frontline team in your company. Ask them a very simple question. Can you explain to me how the metrics you're measured on directly help the company achieve its main strategic goals? If you get a clear, confident, and correct answer, you are in fantastic shape. But if you get blank stares or some kind of confused, hand-wavy response, you've just found your starting point. Their answer is your diagnosis.